A rich white bully thought humiliating a black scholarship girl in front of the entire school board would make her disappear quietly. But 3 minutes later, the same guy who mocked her was lying face down on the hallway floor, sobbing while the entire school watched his empire collapse in real time. What started as just another joke turned into leaked assault videos, hidden racism scandals, corrupt administrators, and a family powerful enough to bury students for years. But this time, they picked the wrong girl to silence. Stay until the end, because the final scene will genuinely leave you speechless. And before we start, comment below where you're watching this video from. Nia Carter knew Redwood Academy hated being embarrassed. She noticed it the moment she transferred there 3 weeks earlier, the polished hallways, the smiling teachers, the banners bragging about Ivy League acceptances, hanging from every wall like trophies. Everything about the school screamed perfection. But beneath that perfection was something colder, something controlled. Students here understood invisible rules without ever saying them out loud. Who mattered? Who didn't? Who could speak freely? And who was expected to stay quiet? Unfortunately for Nia, she broke one of those rules. The second, she challenged Blake Donovan in front of an audience. The tension inside debate theory class had started building long before anyone realized it. Mr. Bennett had assigned a discussion on college admissions and privilege to a topic most students treated like another boring academic exercise. Blake, however, treated every debate like a performance. He sat casually at the center of the room wearing his red and white varsity jacket. One arm stretched across the back of his chair while people around him laughed at every sentence he said. He had that kind of presence, the type that controlled a room before speaking. Star quarterback, student body favorite, son of Victoria Donovan, the most powerful parent connected to Redwood Academy. Blake wasn't just popular, he was protected. And at the end of the day, Blake said confidently, pacing slowly in front of the class, schools should accept students based on merit, not social pressure, not diversity quotas, merit. Several students nodded immediately. A blonde girl near the front muttered, "Exactly." Blake smirked slightly, enjoying the attention. Lowering standards to make people feel included doesn't help anybody. Nia felt her grip tighten around her pen. There it was. Not obvious enough for teachers to call racist. Just subtle enough to hide behind opinion. Mr. Bennett cleared his throat awkwardly. Anyone want to respond? Nobody moved. The room stayed silent. Then Nia slowly raised her hand. Several students turned immediately. Blake looked amused. Go ahead. Nia stood calmly, adjusting the sleeve of her dark blue hoodie. You keep saying admissions should be based purely on merit, she said evenly. So I'm assuming that means you're also against legacy admissions. Blake blinked once. The smile on his face weakened slightly. Nia continued before he could answer. Or donations. Or wealthy parents buying buildings to guarantee acceptance for their children. A couple students exchanged looks. Someone in the back snorted. Blake straightened in his seat. That's not the same thing. Why not? Nia asked immediately. If privilege is acceptable when it benefits rich families, then your argument isn't really about merit, is it? The classroom went completely still. Blake opened his mouth. But for the first time, all semester, no response came out immediately. Nia pressed harder. Because from where I'm standing, she said, it sounds less like you care about fairness and more like you're upset. Other people finally get opportunities too. The room exploded. Several students burst out laughing. One guy slapped his desk. Damn, even Mr. Bennett looked stunned. Blake Donovan had just been humiliated publicly, and everyone knew it. The change in Blake's expression happened instantly. The charming confidence disappeared, replaced by something darker beneath the surface. His jaw tightened hard enough to flex, but what unsettled Nia most was that he suddenly became very calm. Too calm. He stared directly at her, while the laughter slowly died around the room. Then he smiled. "Girls like you," Blake said loudly, "should learn when to stay quiet." The sentence hit the room like ice water. Nobody laughed this time. "Mr." Bennett shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Nia felt dozens of eyes land on her, waiting to see whether she would react, but she refused to give Blake the satisfaction. Instead, she picked up her notebook and sat down without another word, while tension filled every inch of the classroom. The bell rang 3 minutes later. Immediately, students grabbed their phones. Whispers spread across the room like wildfire. "Did you see Blake's face? She cooked him." "Nah. He's gonna lose it." Nia shoved her books into her backpack quickly, hoping to disappear into the crowded hallway before Blake decided to continue things publicly. But the second she stepped outside the classroom doors, she heard fast footsteps behind her. Then bang. A hand slammed hard against the locker inches from her head. "Mia froze." Blake stood directly in front of her now, blocking the hallway while 3 of his friends circled behind him with their phones raised. Live streaming. Of course they were live streaming. Students nearby slowed down immediately. Some pretended to check messages while secretly watching. Others openly filmed. Nobody intervened. Blake leaned slightly closer. "You think embarrassing me was smart?" Nia forced herself not to step backward. "Move." One of Blake's friends laughed loudly. "She's still talking." Another pointed his phone directly at her face. "Yo. The comments are going crazy right now." Blake kept staring at Nia with a cold smile. "You should understand something about this school," he said quietly. "People like me built it." Nia's pulse pounded harder. "And people like me?" she asked. Blake tilted his head slightly. "You're temporary." A few students nearby laughed nervously. Nia looked around the hallway. Hundreds of students, dozens of cameras, not one person willing to help. Then she noticed someone standing farther down near the stairwell. Adrian Cross. Dark hoodie. Backpack hanging off one shoulder. Silent as always. Unlike everyone else, Adrian wasn't filming. He was watching Blake carefully. Like he recognized this side of him already. Nia pushed past Blake without another word and headed toward the cafeteria. Though she could still hear Blake's friends laughing behind her. By lunchtime, the story had already spread across campus. But when Nia entered the crowded cafeteria, she immediately realized the story had changed. People were staring, whispering. Phones glowed across tables as students replayed the same clip over and over. Confused, Nia pulled out her own phone. The video already had over 20,000 views on the school's social page. But it wasn't the real video. Someone had edited it. Every insult Blake made was gone. Every aggressive moment removed. The clip started with Nia criticizing him loudly in class, before cutting to reactions designed to make her seem angry. Hostile. Unstable. The caption above the video made her stomach drop instantly. Scholarship student attacks white classmate during debate. Nia felt her chest tighten. The comments flooded faster every second. She's racist. Why is she even here? Another victim mentality psycho. Across the cafeteria, Blake sat surrounded by laughing friends while students patted him on the back like he was the victim. He didn't even need to look at Nia directly anymore. The damage was already done. Nia slowly lowered her phone. Humiliation burning through her entire body as whispers spread around her table. And near the back exit of the cafeteria, Adrian Cross stared down at the edited video with a troubled expression on his face. Not shocked. Not surprised. Just familiar. as if he had seen Blake destroy someone like this before. That night, Nia walked home beneath cold streetlights with her hood pulled over her head, trying desperately to ignore the knot tightening in her stomach. But halfway down the block, her phone suddenly vibrated violently inside her pocket. One message, then another, then 20 more. Unknown numbers. Threats. Insults. Her screen flooded so quickly she could barely read them anymore, and standing alone beneath the glow of a flickering street lamp, Nia Carter realized something terrifying for the very first time since arriving at Redwood Academy. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. By the next morning, Redwood Academy had already decided who the villain was. Nia Carter felt it before she even stepped through the front gates. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Students stared openly now, no longer pretending to whisper behind her back. Phones glowed in nearly every hand, replaying the same edited clip that had spread across campus overnight like wildfire. 20,000 views had become 50,000 before sunrise. By first period, the comments had turned vicious. People who had never spoken to Nia suddenly had strong opinions about her. That was the terrifying thing about social media at Redwood. Nobody cared about the truth. Once the entertainment value became big enough, Nia kept her head down as she walked through the hallway, gripping the straps of her backpack tightly enough to hurt her fingers. The notifications on her phone still wouldn't stop. Some messages called her racist. Others told her to leave the school before things got worse. A few were far darker than that. One anonymous message simply read, "You don't belong here." She deleted it immediately. But the words stayed stuck in her head anyway. Inside second period English, nobody sat near her. An empty circle surrounded her desk, while students glanced over occasionally before looking away again. Even the teacher avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice the tension swallowing the classroom whole. Blake Donovan entered 5 minutes late, wearing his varsity jacket and carrying himself with the relaxed confidence of someone untouched by consequences. The room instantly shifted around him. Smiles appeared. A couple football players slapped his shoulder supportively. Blake looked directly at Nia. Then, unbelievably, he smiled like he was the victim. "Crazy world we live in," he said loudly while taking his seat. "People get attacked for having opinions." A few students laughed under their breath. Nia felt heat rise into her chest, but she stayed silent. That only made Blake look more untouchable. He wasn't defending himself aggressively because he didn't need to. The school had already chosen his side. By lunchtime, things became worse. The cafeteria buzzed with noise. The second Nia walked inside carrying her tray, conversations lowered instantly into whispers. She could feel eyes following her between tables like predators tracking movement. Blake sat at the center of the room surrounded by friends, laughing loudly, while students crowded around him. At the edge of the table sat his girlfriend, Madison Pierce Blonde. Beautiful, perfectly polished for social media. Madison noticed Nia immediately and leaned toward Blake with a smirk. Nia ignored them and kept walking. Then someone stuck out a foot. Her tray slammed sideways. Food crashed across the floor. Laughter exploded through the cafeteria. Mashed potatoes splattered across Nia's jeans while soda soaked the sleeve of her hoodie. Her breathing stopped for half a second as students pulled out phones instantly. Recording. Always recording. Oh my God. A girl laughed. Did anyone get that Blake leaned back in his chair, pretending to look uncomfortable? "Come on, guys," he said casually, though the grin pulling at the corner of his mouth betrayed him completely. Leave her alone. The fake innocence made Nia angrier than the humiliation itself. She bent down slowly to pick up the tray. Then something cold splashed over the back of her head. Milk. White liquid dripped through her braids onto her shoulders as the cafeteria erupted again. Someone had thrown an entire carton at her. Niafroze. The laughter sounded distant suddenly, drowned beneath the pounding in her ears. She looked around desperately, expecting at least one adult to stop this. Two teachers stood near the cafeteria doors. Both saw everything. Neither moved. One simply turned away. That hurt more than the milk, more than the laughter, because at that moment, Nia realized the humiliation wasn't accidental anymore. It was allowed. Blake finally stood up, still playing the role of reasonable good guy. Seriously, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. People need to chill. Madison laughed beside him. Maybe she should stop acting like she's oppressed all the time. More laughter followed immediately. Nia grabbed her backpack and walked out of the cafeteria before anyone could see her eyes beginning to water. She refused to cry in front of them. The hallway outside felt cold and empty compared to the chaos behind her. She locked herself inside a bathroom stall and stared silently at the milk dripping onto the tile floor. Then her phone vibrated. Unknown sender. No name attached. Only a video file. Nia hesitated before pressing play. Her stomach dropped instantly. It was the original classroom footage. Unedited. Complete. Every insult Blake made was there. Every loaded comment. Every moment he cornered her afterward in the hallway. The viral version online had been manipulated heavily. Someone had cut it intentionally. A second message appeared beneath the file. Look at the metadata. Confused. Nia checked the attached editing information. Editor account Madison Pierce Media. Blake's girlfriend. Nia stared at the screen in disbelief. Madison had edited the clip herself before uploading it to the school network. The entire narrative had been manufactured. Another message appeared. Don't trust anyone. No signature. But Nia already knew who sent it. Adrian Cross. That afternoon, Nia rushed home and immediately opened her laptop, heart pounding as she prepared to upload the real footage online. Finally. Proof. Finally. A chance to expose what Blake and Madison had done. Her fingers shook while logging into her school account. Then the screen refreshed. Account suspended for harassment violations. Nia blinked, confused. She tried again. Error. She checked her social media accounts next. Locked. Reported. Disabled. Every platform connected to the school network was gone. Her entire digital presence had vanished in less than an hour. Panic spread through her chest. They were faster than her. Someone had already anticipated this. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Adrian. Only this time, it wasn't a file. It was a sentence. This school buried worse things than fake videos. Nia stared at the words for a long moment, while unease slowly crawled down her spine. Until now, she had believed Blake Donovan was just another rich bully protected by popularity and privilege. But sitting alone in her bedroom while rain tapped softly against the windows, Nia began realizing something terrifying. This wasn't normal bullying anymore. Something darker was hiding underneath Redwood Academy. And somehow, she had just become part of it. The email summoning Nia Carter to the principal's office arrived before first period even started. No greeting, no explanation, just a single sentence appearing across her phone screen while students continued whispering around her in the hallway. Report to Principal Reynolds, immediately. By now, the entire school already knew her name, not because of who she actually was, but because Redwood Academy had turned her into a story people could consume between classes. Students stared openly as Nia walked through the halls toward the administration building. Some whispered loudly on purpose. Others smirked while pretending not to. Every few feet, she caught glimpses of herself on phone screens, the edited debate clip still spreading through the school like a virus. No one wanted cured. The humiliation from yesterday still clung to her skin. She could practically feel the dried milk in her hair, even after washing it twice the night before. When Nia entered Principal Reynolds' office, the atmosphere felt immediately wrong. Too formal, too rehearsed. Reynolds sat behind his polished oak desk, with both hands folded carefully in front of him, while Vice Principal Harris stood silently near the window, pretending to review paperwork. Neither looked surprised to see her. "Sit down." "Nya," Reynolds said calmly. No warmth, no concern, just control. Nia lowered herself slowly into the chair across from him. "You wanted to see me." Reynolds sighed heavily. Like this entire situation had inconvenienced him personally. "There's growing tension among students," he said. "And frankly, your presence at the center of these incidents is becoming disruptive." Nia stared at him in disbelief. "My presence. We have reports." Harris interrupted coldly. "That your behavior in class has escalated division on campus." Nia almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the accusation was so shamelessly backwards, she couldn't believe an adult was saying it out loud. "So Blake humiliates me publicly. Someone edits videos to make me look racist. Students throw food at me in the cafeteria. Nobody is excusing bullying." Reynolds cut in quickly. "But you need to understand perception matters." There it was. Not truth. Perception. The room suddenly felt suffocating. Reynolds leaned forward slightly. "Redwood Academy values unity. Right now, emotions are high. Maybe it would be wise for you to avoid provoking further conflict." Nia felt something crack quietly inside her chest. Not sadness. Not fear. Something colder. Because for the first time, she realized the administration wasn't ignoring what was happening. They were managing it. Protecting it. Protecting him. Outside the office windows, students moved through the hallways beneath bright morning sunlight while inside the room. Adults calmly blamed the victim for disturbing the peace. Nia stood slowly. "So this meeting isn't about stopping harassment." Reynolds remained silent. That silence answered everything. The second she stepped back into the hallway, conversations nearby stopped instantly. Students turned toward her like spectators waiting for another public execution. Then a familiar voice cut sharply through the silence. Nobody wanted her here anyway. Blake Donovan leaned casually against a locker 20 feet away with his friends surrounding him. His expression remained relaxed, almost bored. But his voice carried loudly enough for the entire hallway to hear. Nobody challenged him. Nobody told him to stop. Some students even laughed quietly. Nia froze for half a second as humiliation burned through her chest again. But what terrified her more than Blake's words was the silence afterward. Hundreds of students stood around them. Teachers walked nearby. Yet nobody defended her. Because Blake Donovan controlled the atmosphere at Redwood Academy, the same way storms controlled the sky. He didn't need to threaten people directly anymore. Everyone already understood. Nia forced herself to keep walking. Behind her, Blake's friends laughed louder. She still thinks she belongs here. Scholarship season's over. Maybe she should transfer again. Nia kept moving until she reached the far stairwell near the older side of campus where fewer students usually went. The noise of the hallway faded slightly there, replaced by the hum of old fluorescent lights. That was where she saw Adrian Cross waiting near the basement stairs with his hood pulled low over his head. "You shouldn't be seen talking to me," Nia said quietly. Adrian glanced toward the hallway before speaking. "You still think this is about one video?" Something in his tone made her uneasy immediately. Without another word, Adrian motioned for her to follow him downstairs. The basement level beneath Redwood Academy looked abandoned compared to the polished upper floors, dust-coated old trophy cases. The lights flickered weakly overhead, while pipes rattled behind the walls. Adrian led her toward a locked storage room near the back corner, before pulling a small key from his pocket. "How do you even have access to this place?" Nia asked. Adrian ignored the question. Inside the room sat rows of old filing cabinets. Yearbooks, archived newspapers, and forgotten student records. The air smelled like paper and mildew. Then Adrian pulled out a faded photograph. There was another student. He said quietly. Nia frowned slightly. 2 years ago. He handed her the photo. A black teenage boy stood smiling beside a group of students wearing football uniforms. The image looked normal at first glance until Nia noticed Blake standing in the background. Younger, but unmistakably him. His name was Marcus Hill. Adrian continued. Junior year. Track athlete. Good grades. Nia looked back at the photo. What happened to him? Adrian's jaw tightened. He got jumped inside the locker room after practice. Nia's stomach dropped. What? There were rumors he got into an argument with some players. Adrian's voice stayed low and controlled. But anger flickered underneath every word. School called it an accident. Said he fell. Nia stared at him. But he didn't fall. She whispered. Adrian slowly shook his head. He disappeared a week later. Transferred suddenly. Nobody talked about it again. The silence inside the storage room felt suffocating now. Nia looked back down at the photograph, her pulse beginning to pound harder. Then Adrian reached into another folder. This time, he handed her a printed security image. Blurry. Dark. But clear enough. The photo showed several figures standing near the football locker room hallway late at night. And right there in the center, Blake Donovan. At the scene, Nia felt ice spread through her entire body. He was there. She whispered. Adrian nodded once. He's always there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The old fluorescent light buzzed overhead, while fear slowly settled into Nia's chest. This was bigger than bullying. Bigger than edited videos or cafeteria humiliation. Something had happened inside this school before she ever arrived. Something dangerous. Then suddenly a faint electronic click echoed above them. Adrian's head snapped upward instantly. What was that? Nia whispered. Adrian's expression darkened. Slowly, he turned toward the top corner of the storage room. A small red light blinked quietly above the doorway. Security camera. Watching them, recording everything. And somewhere else inside Redwood Academy, someone was now watching back. The moment Adrian noticed the blinking red light above the storage room door, his entire expression changed. The calm, detached look he usually carried disappeared instantly, replaced by something sharper. Fear. Real fear. He grabbed the photograph from Nia's hands and shoved the folders back into the cabinet with quick, nervous movements. We need to go, he said quietly. Nia glanced once more toward the security camera mounted in the corner. The tiny red light blinked steadily back at them like an eye that had already seen too much. Who's watching us? She whispered. Adrian didn't answer. That scared her more than if he had beat. They left the basement through a side staircase that emptied into the back parking lot behind the gymnasium. The afternoon sky hung dark and gray over Redwood Academy, while cold wind rattled through rows of parked cars. Students flooded toward buses and vehicles across campus, laughing and talking like nothing was wrong. Like the school wasn't hiding secrets underneath its polished floors. Adrian kept walking quickly. You really think somebody monitors those cameras? Nia asked, struggling to keep up beside him. I know they do. That answer landed heavily. Nia stopped near the edge of the parking lot. Then why show me any of this? Adrian finally looked at her directly. Because Marcus Hill wasn't the first. The wind seemed to disappear completely for a second. What does that mean? Before Adrian could respond, his face suddenly tightened. His eyes shifted past her shoulder toward the front side of campus. Nia turned. Blake Donovan stood near a black SUV across the lot, with two teammates beside him. Even from a distance, his stare felt suffocating. One of his friends laughed at something Blake said, but Blake himself never smiled. He just watched Nia and Adrian standing together, watching carefully, like he already knew. Adrian lowered his voice immediately. "Stop talking to me at school." "What, you heard me?" "Adrian, if they think you know something, this gets worse." Nia frowned. "Who's they?" Again. Adrian didn't answer directly. He just stepped backward toward his motorcycle, parked near the fence line. "Go home," he muttered. "And don't trust anyone connected to the Donovans." Then he drove away without another word. That night, rain hammered against the windows of Adrian Cross's bedroom while computer screens illuminated the darkness around him. Files covered every inch of his desktop, archived emails, screenshots, security images, old yearbook scans. For the last 2 years, Adrian had quietly collected pieces of Redwood Academy's buried history, like evidence from a crime scene nobody else cared about solving. Marcus Hill, locker room assault, deleted reports, missing disciplinary files. Every trail somehow led back to the same names. Donovan. 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 Adrian plugged in an external hard drive and began transferring the newest files he had shown Nia earlier that afternoon. The progress bar crawled slowly across the screen. Then suddenly the monitor flickered. Adrian froze. A second later, every open folder disappeared. "What the hell?" His mouse moved uncontrollably on its own. Windows closed rapidly across the desktop while lines of code flashed black across the screen. Adrian's pulse spiked instantly. "No. No. No." He grabbed the keyboard, trying desperately to stop it. But the system locked him out completely. On a B1. Years of saved files vanished in front of his eyes. Deleted. Corrupted. Gone. Then a single message appeared in the center of the screen. "Stop digging." Adrian's blood ran cold. A second later, the laptop shut itself off entirely. Silence swallowed the room. For several seconds, Adrian just sat there, staring at his own reflection in the dead black screen, while rain continued slamming outside. They found him. Meanwhile, across town, Nia sat at the kitchen table trying to finish homework she couldn't focus on. Her mother worked a late nursing shift, leaving the house unusually quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional vibration of Nia's phone. She had stopped checking the messages hours ago. The insults blurred together eventually. "Attention seeker. Race baiter. Go back where you came from." One message arrived from an unknown number. This one was different. "If you keep digging, your scholarship disappears next." Nia stared at the screen. A cold knot formed slowly in her stomach. This wasn't some random student trolling online anymore. Nobody outside the administration even knew how important her scholarship was. Without it, she couldn't stay at Redwood Academy. Her phone rang suddenly. Unknown caller. Nia hesitated before answering. "Hello, only breathing. Slow. Calm." Then a woman's voice spoke softly enough to sound almost polite. "You should learn when to let things go." The call ended immediately. Nia sat frozen at the kitchen table. For the first time since arriving at Redwood, she felt something beyond humiliation or anger. She felt hunted. The next morning, the atmosphere at school felt even heavier. Students still whispered when she passed. But now Nia noticed something else, too. Teachers watching her carefully. Conversations stopping when she entered rooms. Doors closing quietly. As if rumors were spreading among adults, too. During lunch period, Naya spotted Blake leaning against the football field fence, while reporters from the local school newsletter interviewed him about Friday's upcoming championship game. Blake smiled easily for the cameras. Charming and relaxed as always. The perfect student, the perfect son, the perfect lie. Then Nia noticed someone standing beside the bleachers watching the interview proudly. Victoria Donovan, Blake's mother, even from across the field. She carried power effortlessly, expensive coat, perfect posture, the kind of woman people moved aside for automatically. Several administrators stood nearby, speaking to her like employees instead of equals. Nia suddenly remembered Adrian's words. Don't trust anyone connected to the Donovans. Later that afternoon, Adrian met Nia briefly behind the old gym building. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes now. My laptop got hit last night, he said immediately. Nia's stomach dropped. What, they wiped everything? All the files. Almost. Nia looked around nervously. Who could even do something like that? Adrian laughed bitterly. You still think Blake is the one running this? Then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a thin manila folder. Inside were copies of disciplinary reports from 2 years earlier. Marcus Hill's name appeared repeatedly, but one signature stood out above all the others. Victoria Donovan. Nia stared at the documents in disbelief. She pressured the school board to remove him. Adrian said quietly, not suspend him. Remove him. Why? Because Marcus tried reporting what happened in that locker room. A chill crawled down Nia's spine. And after that, she whispered. Adrian looked away toward the football field. He disappeared a week later. Before Nia could respond, Adrian suddenly stiffened. A black sedan sat parked across the street outside campus. Engine running. Dark-tinted windows facing directly toward them. Nia felt unease tighten in her chest immediately. Do you know that car? She asked quietly. Adrian's face lost color slightly. No. The sedan didn't move. It just stayed there. Watching. That evening? Long after sunset, Nia noticed the same black car again in her neighborhood, parked half a block behind her house. Her pulse quickened instantly. When she hurried inside and locked the front door, her mother was already home from work. Exhausted and half asleep on the couch. You okay? Baby, her mother asked softly. Nia forced a nod. Yeah. But before she could say anything else, the house phone rang. Her mother answered casually. Then her expression changed. Slowly. Completely. Nia watched confusion turn into fear right in front of her eyes. Her mother gripped the receiver tighter. Who is this? A pause. Then silence. The caller hung up. What happened? Nia asked immediately. Her mother looked at her for several long seconds before speaking. They said, her voice shook slightly, tell your daughter to stop asking questions. The room went completely silent. Outside, headlights from the black sedan briefly passed across their living room window before disappearing down the street. And for the first time since all of this began, Nia Carter was truly afraid. Nia Carter barely slept after the phone call. Every sound outside her house felt wrong now. Every pair of headlights passing through the neighborhood made her heart tighten. By morning, exhaustion sat heavily behind her eyes. But fear had transformed into something else overnight. Anger. Because whoever was threatening her clearly believed intimidation would make her stop digging. Instead, it only confirmed Adrian had been telling the truth from the beginning. Something dangerous had happened at Redwood Academy, and powerful people were terrified of it resurfacing. The football field lights blazed against the dark evening sky as practice continued after school. Players shouted across the turf, while coaches barked instructions from the sidelines. From a distance, Redwood looked perfect again. Successful athletes, cheering students, banners waving in the cold wind. Nobody watching from outside would ever imagine secrets were rotting underneath all that perfection. Nia stood near the bleachers with her hood pulled low, while Adrian sat beside her, scrolling rapidly through files on a small tablet. "You shouldn't have come here," Adrian muttered without looking up. "You said you found something." "I said I found part of something." Nia crossed her arms impatiently. "That's becoming your favorite sentence." Adrian finally glanced toward her. Dark circles visible beneath his tired eyes. Ever since his laptop had been hacked, he looked constantly alert now, like someone expecting danger around every corner. "I managed to recover fragments from the deleted drive," he said quietly. "Not everything, but enough." Nia's stomach tightened immediately. Enough for what Adrian hesitated before answering. To prove Marcus Hill didn't fall. The noise from football practice suddenly felt very far away. Adrian stood up and motioned toward the older equipment building near the back parking lot. "Not here." They crossed campus quickly while the sun disappeared completely behind the stadium lights. Most students remained focused on practice and weekend plans, unaware of the tension building quietly around them. Adrian unlocked a side door leading into a small editing room beneath the old media department, a cramped space filled with computer monitors, tangled wires, old camera equipment, and stacks of hard drives. "This used to belong to the yearbook club," Adrian explained while locking the door behind them. "Nobody comes down here anymore." The room glowed blue from the monitors as Adrian connected a portable drive into one of the systems. His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard while corrupted files flickered across the screen. Nia leaned closer. "Is this the video part of it?" Static distorted the screen briefly. Then the footage appeared. Black and white security camera footage from 2 years earlier. Timestamp: 11:47 p.m. Location: football locker room corridor. Nia's pulse immediately quickened. At first, the hallway looked empty. Then Marcus Hill entered the frame carrying a duffel bag over one shoulder. He looked relaxed, unaware of anything waiting for him. A second later, Blake Donovan appeared behind him alongside 3 teammates, even younger. Blake still carried that same cold confidence. Marcus turned. The argument started silently at first, but the tension was obvious from body language alone. Blake stepped closer aggressively. Marcus shoved him backward. Then everything exploded. One player slammed Marcus into the lockers. Another punched him hard across the face. Nia gasped quietly. Marcus tried fighting back, but there were too many of them. Blake grabbed him by the hoodie, while another teammate kicked his legs out from underneath him. Marcus crashed violently against the floor. The footage shook slightly. Then Nia noticed something worse. Someone else stood farther down the hallway, watching. On adult, a teacher, the man remained partially obscured by shadows. But his face became visible for one horrifying second as he stepped beneath the overhead lights. Coach Darnell, assistant football coach. He saw everything and did nothing. Nia felt sick. "Oh my God," on screen. Marcus struggled weakly, while Blake crouched beside him, saying something impossible to hear through the silent footage. Then Blake shoved Marcus's head violently into the lockers one final time before the screen abruptly cut to static. The room went completely silent. Nia stared at the frozen screen in disbelief. "He could have died," she whispered. Adrian didn't answer, because they both knew it was true. Nia turned toward him sharply. "We take this to the police." "No." "What do you mean no?" Adrian stood up immediately. "You still don't understand how protected they are." Nia's anger flared instantly. "There's literal video evidence. And you think that matters?" Adrian snapped back. Marcus had evidence too. The words hit hard. Adrian paced anxiously across the room now. "You think Blake's family survived this long because nobody ever tried exposing them, Redwood Berry's problems? That's what they do. Nia shook her head furiously. Not this. Not anymore. You don't get it. Adrian lowered his voice sharply. The school board. The boosters. The administration, they're all connected. Blake isn't the system. He's just the spoiled face of it. Nia looked back toward the paused video frame showing Marcus collapsed on the floor. If we stay quiet, she said softly, then they win again. For a moment, Adrian said nothing, and deep down, Nia realized that was exactly what scared him most. Not the evidence, the consequences of using it. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly across the night sky. A second later, every monitor inside the editing room flickered violently. Adrian froze. What was that? Nia asked quietly. The hallway outside creaked. Both of them went still. Then a loud crash echoed somewhere upstairs. Nia's heart slammed against her ribs. Adrian moved quickly toward the monitors, ripping the portable drive free from the computer. They found us. Another crash. Closer this time. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Someone was inside the building. Adrian killed the lights instantly, plunging the room into darkness, except for the faint glow of emergency exit signs bleeding beneath the doorway. The footsteps continued approaching. Nia struggled to breathe quietly, while Adrian grabbed a metal baseball bat leaning beside the desk. The doorknob rattled violently. Once, twice, then stopped. Silence. For several terrifying seconds. Nobody moved. Then suddenly, the entire building lost power. Everything went black. Nia heard glass shatter somewhere nearby. A voice cursed loudly upstairs. And then footsteps rushed directly toward their room. Adrian grabbed Nia's wrist immediately. Back door. Now. They stumbled blindly through the darkness while thunder exploded outside overhead. Nia could barely see anything except Adrian moving ahead of her toward the emergency exit near the rear staircase. Another loud bang echoed behind them. Someone had kicked open the editing room door. Flashlights cut through the darkness wildly. They're downstairs. Nia's blood turned cold instantly. Adrian shoved the portable drive into his jacket pocket while pulling her toward the exit. But right before they reached the back stairwell, Adrian suddenly stopped. His face changed, like he had just remembered something terrible. There's one more person involved, he said breathlessly. Nia frowned in confusion. What are you talking about? But before Adrian could answer, the entire building went completely dark again. And somewhere behind them, someone started running straight toward the stairs. The person chasing them through the dark stairwell never caught up. Adrian and Nia burst through the rear exit of the media building into freezing rain before sprinting across the empty faculty parking lot without looking back. Thunder cracked overhead while water soaked through their clothes within seconds. But neither of them stopped running until Adrian's motorcycle finally came into view beneath the far security lights. Only then did Adrian bend over slightly. Struggling to catch his breath, Nia grabbed his arm immediately. Who else is involved? Adrian looked pale. Rain dripped from his dark hair into his eyes while his chest rose unevenly. I can't prove it yet, he muttered. That's not an answer. Adrian glanced back toward the school building, glowing faintly behind them. If I say the wrong name before we're ready, we're dead. The words should have sounded dramatic. Instead, they sounded honest. 2 days later, Nia Carter sat outside the third-floor boardroom of Redwood Academy while tension pressed down on the hallway like concrete. The emergency meeting had been called quietly that morning. No public announcement. No emails to parents. Only select staff, board members, and legal representatives had been invited upstairs, which meant whatever was happening inside that room mattered. A lot. Nia sat alone in a hard leather chair outside the closed doors, while students moved through the lower floors, completely unaware that the administration was preparing to sacrifice someone upstairs. Here, across the hallway stood Blake Donovan wearing a tailored black jacket instead of his varsity uniform for the first time all week. Beside him, Victoria Donovan spoke calmly with the school's attorney, while several board members listened carefully. Victoria looked immaculate as always. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect control. She noticed Nia watching her, and offered a thin smile that somehow felt colder than hatred. Like she already knew how this meeting would end. Blake leaned casually against the wall nearby. But unlike before, there was tension hiding beneath his confidence now. Since the locker room footage resurfaced, rumors had begun spreading quietly across campus. Players whispered during practice. Teachers avoided certain conversations. Something unstable had entered Redwood Academy, and everyone could feel it. But the Donovans were still trying to contain it before it exploded publicly. The boardroom doors finally opened. Nia Carter. Principal Reynolds called stiffly. Inside. Now. The room smelled like polished wood and expensive coffee. Long windows overlooked the football field below, while 12 people sat around a massive conference table beneath the Redwood Academy crest, hanging proudly on the wall. Unity. Excellence. Integrity. The irony almost made Nia laugh. Victoria Donovan sat near the center beside the school attorney. Fingers folded neatly together, like she belonged there more than anyone else. Blake sat silently beside his mother, while Adrian remained near the far wall, pretending not to draw attention to himself. Principal Reynolds cleared his throat. This meeting concerns escalating incidents involving student conduct, reputational damage to Redwood Academy, and potential disciplinary action. Translation: they wanted someone blamed quickly before the scandal spread outside campus. And that someone was Nia. The attorney slid several printed screenshots across the table. Edited social media posts. Arguments. Viral clips. We have evidence, he said carefully, that Miss Carter's behavior has intensified conflict among students. Nia stared at him in disbelief. You mean after I got harassed, threatened, filmed, no one denies inappropriate student behavior occurred? Reynolds interrupted quickly. But this school cannot survive continuous public controversy. There it was again. Not justice. Reputation. Always reputation. Victoria finally spoke for the first time. Calm and composed. Redwood Academy has spent decades building opportunities for students. One scandal can destroy everything families have invested in. Nia looked directly at her. You mean one victim? Victoria didn't even blink. I mean reality. The room grew quieter. Adrian shifted slightly near the wall, but stayed silent. Nia's pulse pounded harder. So what exactly is this meeting? You want me suspended? Expelled? Nobody answered immediately. Which was answer enough. Blake finally leaned back in his chair with that familiar cold smile returning slowly to his face. Maybe this school just isn't the right fit for you. Nia turned toward him sharply. You assaulted someone. Blake's expression hardened instantly. You should be very careful making accusations you can't prove. At that moment, Adrian quietly reached into his hoodie pocket beneath the table. Nobody noticed. Not even Blake. The school attorney continued speaking. For the protection of the student body and institutional stability, voluntary withdrawal may be the most appropriate resolution. Nia almost lost control then. They were actually trying to erase her. Not punish Blake. Not investigate Marcus Hill. Erase her. Victoria folded her hands calmly. Sometimes, difficult decisions protect the greater good. Nia stared at her in disbelief. You covered up violence. Watch your tone. You pressured the school board to remove Marcus Hill after he got attacked. For the first time, real tension flickered across several faces around the room. Principal Reynolds spoke quickly. That allegation is completely inappropriate. But Victoria remained strangely calm, almost bored. Then she made the mistake that changed everything. One scholarship student, she said coldly, isn't worth destroying this school. Silence. Absolute silence. Even Blake looked toward his mother sharply. Nia felt the air leave her lungs. Because Victoria hadn't just exposed herself. She had exposed the entire system. And somewhere beneath the conference tableau, small hidden live stream camera continued broadcasting everything in real time. Adrian lowered his eyes carefully, pretending to type on his phone, while thousands of viewers silently flooded into the stream link he had anonymously posted minutes earlier. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands more. The comments exploded instantly. What did she just say? Is this real Redwood Academy racist scandal live? Someone screen record this now. Inside the boardroom. Nobody realized yet. Victoria continued speaking calmly. This institution cannot be blackmailed by emotional narratives. Adrian's screen refreshed again. 20,000 live viewers. Then 30. Outside the room, phones across Redwood Academy suddenly began vibrating at the same time. Students checked notifications. Teachers froze mid-conversation. Football players pulled out screens during practice. The live stream spread through social media like gasoline catching fire. And then somebody inside the boardroom finally noticed. The attorney's phone buzzed violently against the table. He glanced downward. His face lost color instantly. Oh my God. Victoria frowned. He turned the screen toward her. For the first time since Nia had met her, Victoria Donovan looked genuinely afraid. The live stream showed her own face speaking live beneath thousands of furious comments pouring upward faster every second. Blake shot upright from his chair. What the hell is this? Chaos exploded instantly. Principal Reynolds lunged toward Adrian. Turn it off. Too late. Students were already reposting clips everywhere. Local reporters started tagging the school online. Parents flooded comment sections demanding answers. One phrase repeated over and over across social media. One scholarship student isn't worth destroying this school. Victoria stood abruptly. Who did this? But nobody answered because panic had already consumed the room. Board members shouted over each other. The attorney demanded phones immediately. Blake looked at Nia with pure hatred now. But for the first time since this nightmare began, his confidence was cracking visibly. And outside the boardroom windows, notification sounds echoed non-stop throughout the entire campus. Redwood Academy was trending across the state within minutes. The scandal they spent years burying had finally escaped their control. Nia slowly stood from her chair while chaos swallowed the room around her, and somewhere deep in her chest, she realized something enormous had just shifted. Because this was no longer about a bullied scholarship student anymore. This was war. And that was the moment. Everything finally started collapsing. By sunrise, Redwood Academy was no longer just a private school scandal. It was a wildfire. The live stream from the boardroom spread across every platform overnight with terrifying speed. TikTok clips, Twitter threads, Reddit discussions, YouTube reactions. The phrase, "one scholarship student isn't worth destroying this school," had become the internet's newest symbol of institutional racism within less than 12 hours. Millions of people who had never even heard of Redwood Academy were suddenly dissecting every detail of the scandal online. And for the first time in years, the Donovans were losing control of the narrative. Nia Carter sat at her kitchen table staring at the endless flood of headlines covering her phone screen while exhaustion burned behind her eyes. Local news stations replayed Victoria Donovan's words repeatedly beside footage of angry protesters gathering outside the school gates. Former students began posting anonymous Anonymous stories describing years of discrimination hidden beneath Redwood's polished reputation. Some shared screenshots, others uploaded old emails and disciplinary records. Every hour brought another accusation. The school that once looked untouchable was beginning to crack open publicly. Her phone vibrated again. Another trending hashtag. Number: expose. Redwood Nia barely had time to process one disaster before another appeared online. She's awake. Nia looked up as her mother entered the kitchen carrying coffee. Dark circles lined her face too. Neither of them had truly slept since the live stream exploded. "You need to stay home today," her mother said quietly. Nia shook her head immediately. "If I disappear now, they win. They already threatened this family, and now everyone can see why." Her mother hesitated, because deep down, they both knew something important had changed after the live stream. Fear worked best in silence, and Redwood Academy was no longer silent. Across town, panic spread through the Donovan household like poison. Blake Donovan stood inside his enormous living room, while television reporters discussed his family live on national news. His mother paced furiously nearby with her phone pressed against her ear, while legal advisors shouted over each other through speakerphones. "This needs containment immediately. We're losing board support. Parents are demanding resignations." Victoria ended the call violently and turned toward Blake with fury burning in her eyes. "You said nobody still had footage." Blake clenched his jaw. "I didn't know Adrian kept copies." "You didn't know," Victoria snapped. "That's your answer." Blake slammed a fist against the marble counter, hard enough to shake the glasses nearby. "What do you want me to say?" Silence crashed through the room. For the first time since this nightmare began, Blake actually looked afraid, not angry, not arrogant. Afraid. Because public humiliation was something Blake Donovan had never experienced before. At Redwood Academy, he controlled the atmosphere. Teachers protected him. Students worshipped him. Administrators cleaned up his mistakes before consequences ever reached him. But the internet didn't care about his last name anymore. The internet smelled blood, and it wanted more. At school, chaos consumed the campus completely. Protesters stood outside the gates, holding signs demanding investigations, while reporters crowded the sidewalks waiting for statements from administrators. Students walked through hallways, staring at phones instead of each other now. Every few minutes, another old story surfaced online. A Latino student suspended after reporting racial harassment. An Asian debate captain forced to resign after accusing football players of threats. Anonymous accusations about teachers ignoring abuse for years. The deeper people dug, the uglier Redwood became. Inside the cafeteria, whispers spread faster than ever. "My cousin went here 3 years ago. She said this stuff always happened. I heard they paid parents off. No way Blake survives this." But not everyone supported Nia. Others still defended Blake aggressively online, insisting the school was under attack by cancel culture. Some students wore football jerseys in protest, while others posted hashtags supporting the Donovans. Redwood Academy had split into two sides almost overnight, and right in the center of it stood Nia. She hated it. Hated being stared at. Hated becoming some symbol strangers argued about online. But most of all, she hated realizing Marcus Hill never got this chance. 2 years ago, the school buried him before the world could listen. Now the world was finally listening. That afternoon, Adrian met Nia behind the old gym again, while helicopters from local news stations hovered faintly above campus. "You see this," Adrian muttered. Holding up his phone, Nia glanced at the screen. Another former student had posted a video claiming a coach threatened him after reporting racist abuse during sophomore year. The comments underneath exploded by the second. "They're losing control," Nia whispered. Adrian nodded once. "Which makes them dangerous," Nia studied him carefully. You still think they'll try covering this up? Adrian gave her a look that almost seemed unbelievable to him. You think powerful people just surrender? Before Nia could answer, shouting suddenly erupted nearby. Students gathered near the football field entrance while phones lifted rapidly into the air recording something. Blake Donovan. He stormed across campus with two teammates beside him while reporters shouted questions from behind barricades outside the school gates. Blake, did you assault Marcus Hill? Did your mother pressure the school board? Do you deny the footage? Blake ignored them at first. Then someone yelled racist. Everything stopped. Blake spun around instantly. His face twisted with raw fury as he shoved through the crowd toward the student who shouted it. Several cameras caught the moment perfectly. You don't know anything about me, Blake screamed. The crowd fell silent, because nobody had ever seen Blake Donovan lose control publicly before. A teacher rushed forward quickly. Blake, get out of my face. The teacher actually stepped backward. Nia watched from across the courtyard, while unease settled deep inside her chest. Blake looked unstable now. Cornered, the kind of person who might do something reckless simply because his perfect image was collapsing too fast to save. Then suddenly Adrian's phone buzzed violently. He checked the notification, and his expression changed immediately. What? Nia asked. Adrian slowly turned the screen toward her. A breaking news headline flashed across the display. Donovan Financial Group loses major education sponsor after Redwood scandal. Nia's eyes widened. One of Redwood Academy's largest donors had officially pulled millions in funding. And beneath the article, comments flooded endlessly. This is just the beginning. Across campus. Blake checked his own phone seconds later. Nia watched the exact moment. Panic overtook him completely. His face lost color. His breathing visibly changed. Because now this wasn't just social humiliation anymore. It was destroying his family's power. Students around him immediately noticed too. Whispers spread instantly. Oh my God. They lost the sponsor. His mom's finished. Blake looked around wildly like the walls of Redwood Academy were suddenly closing around him. Then, without another word, he shoved past everyone and disappeared toward the parking lot. For the first time in his life, Blake Donovan was running from something. But the internet wasn't done with him yet. That night, just as national news networks began covering the sponsorship collapse live on television, a brand new video suddenly appeared online from an anonymous account. The caption read only Blake Donovan, Part 2. And when Nia pressed player, blood went cold instantly. The new video detonated across the internet before midnight. Unlike the locker room footage, this one wasn't blurry. Security camera footage hidden in shadows. It was sharp, clear, personal, shot vertically on someone's phone from inside a crowded house party nearly a year earlier. Music blasted loudly in the background, while football players laughed around a kitchen island covered in beer bottles and half-empty cups. Then Blake Donovan appeared on screen. Angry. Shouting. The camera shook as someone argued with him off-screen. A smaller student wearing a varsity training shirt stumbled backward into frame while Blake moved aggressively toward him. Say it again. Blake snapped. The student tried walking away. Blake grabbed him by the collar. The room erupted into nervous yelling. And then Blake punched him directly in the face, hard enough to send him crashing headfirst into a marble countertop. The sound alone made Nia flinch. Blood spread instantly across the floor. The video ended seconds later. But the damage was catastrophic. By morning, the internet had identified the injured student as Ethan Morales, a former junior varsity player who abruptly transferred schools last year after suffering severe head trauma. At the time, rumors claimed Ethan had started the fight himself and attacked Blake first. Redwood Academy suspended Ethan quietly, while Blake faced no consequences. Now the truth looked very different. Nia stared at her phone in disbelief while comments flooded underneath the video. He could have killed him. They covered this up too. How many victims are there? Every refresh brought another wave of outrage. And this time, the betrayal cut even deeper, because the anonymous account that leaked the footage belonged to someone nobody expected. Connor Hayes, Blake Donovan's best friend. His teammate since middle school. The same guy who had stood beside him through every hallway confrontation, every football game, every public humiliation of other students. Connor had turned on him. The news spread through Redwood Academy within minutes. Students packed hallways whispering furiously while teachers struggled unsuccessfully to regain order in classrooms nobody cared about anymore. The school felt less like an academy now and more like a collapsing building moments before cave-in. Nobody trusted anyone, especially inside the football program. Nia spotted arguments erupting between players near the gym before first period even started. Teammates screamed accusations across locker room benches, while coaches barked useless demands for silence. You said nobody kept videos that wasn't supposed to leak. We're all screwed now. The unity that once made Redwood football untouchable had started rotting from the inside. Because fear changed people, and now everyone was afraid Blake Donovan would drag them down with him. Near lunchtime, Adrian found Nia sitting alone outside the library steps, scrolling through headlines. Connor disappeared. He said quietly. Nia looked up immediately. What, didn't come to school today? Rumor is Blake's been calling him non-stop all night. Nia frowned. Why would Connor release it now? Adrian leaned against the railing beside her. Because people stay loyal until survival becomes more important. That answer unsettled her. Because deep down, she knew Adrian was right. The stronger the scandal grew, the more people would betray each other trying to escape consequences first. And Blake Donovan was beginning to lose everyone around him. By afternoon, the tension across campus became unbearable. Students gathered in groups whispering, while reporters crowded the sidewalks outside the school entrance again. Helicopters hovered faintly overhead. Social media influencers live-streamed outside the gates, discussing the scandal in real time like entertainment. Redwood Academy had become a spectacle. And at the center of it all, Blake Donovan was unraveling publicly. Nia first saw him near the football field after practice ended early. He looked exhausted now, eyes bloodshot. Movements restless. Jaw constantly clenched. Gone was the polished confidence that once made him untouchable. Students no longer moved out of his way automatically either. Some stared openly now. Others avoided him entirely. Then Connor Hayes finally appeared. The entire atmosphere shifted instantly. Players standing nearby fell silent as Connor crossed the parking lot carrying a duffel bag over one shoulder. Unlike Blake, Connor looked strangely calm. Blake stormed toward him immediately. "You think this is funny?" Blake shouted loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Connor stopped walking. "You leaked it." Blake snapped. Connor's face hardened. "You should have stopped a long time ago." Several students immediately pulled out phones. Recording. Always recording. Blake stepped closer aggressively. "After everything I did for you," Connor laughed bitterly. "Did for me? You mean covering up your messes?" The crowd around them grew rapidly now. Nia pushed closer through students while Adrian followed behind her cautiously. Blake's breathing became uneven. "You're dead to me?" Connor shook his head slowly. "No. Blake, you're finally exposed." That sentence broke something. Blake lunged forward violently, shoving Connor hard against a parked car. The impact echoed across the lot as students gasped loudly. Connor swung back instantly. The fight exploded. Punches. Shouting. Bodies crashing into cars. Football players rushed forward trying to separate them while dozens of phones captured every second from every angle. Blake fought recklessly now. driven entirely by panic and rage instead of control. Connor landed a brutal punch across Blake's face that split his lip open instantly. Blood sprayed across the pavement. Students screamed. Someone yelled, "Oh my God!" Blake tackled Connor onto the concrete and started swinging wildly while teammates dragged at his shoulders trying to pull him off. "You ruined my life," Blake shouted. Connor shoved him backward hard enough to stumble. "You ruined your own." The sentence echoed through the crowd like a gunshot, because everyone knew it was true. Blake stood there, breathing heavily while blood dripped from his mouth onto his expensive jacket. Around him, students stared with something they had never shown him before. Not admiration, not fear, disgust. And Blake realized it. For the first time in his life, Blake Donovan looked completely alone. Then suddenly sirens echoed nearby. The entire crowd turned toward the front gate simultaneously. 2 police cruisers rolled onto campus slowly beneath flashing red and blue lights, while reporters outside erupted into chaos. Students immediately stepped backward, phones lifting higher into the air. Teachers rushed forward, yelling for everyone to clear the parking lot. Nobody listened. Blake froze completely. Connor looked away toward the arriving officers. Nia felt her pulse hammering inside her chest as the police vehicles stopped near the crowd. Officers stepped out carefully, scanning the chaos surrounding the football team, while cameras captured every second live online. Whispers spread instantly through the students gathered nearby. "They're here because of the videos." Someone finally called them. "Is Blake getting arrested?" Blake's face drained of color. For the first time since this nightmare began, he looked like someone realizing power might not save him anymore. And standing in the middle of the shattered remains of Redwood Academy's perfect image, surrounded by flashing police lights and hundreds of recording phones, Blake Donovan finally understood what losing felt like. By the next morning, Blake Donovan had become radioactive. Nobody said it directly at first, but everyone at Redwood Academy could feel the shift happening in real time. The same hallways that once opened for Blake now seemed to close around him. Students stopped conversations when he passed. Football players avoided eye contact. Teachers who used to praise him suddenly found reasons to walk the other direction. Even the cheerleaders sitting near the courtyard fountain whispered while staring down at their phones whenever his name appeared in another breaking headline online. And his name was everywhere. Redwood assault scandal expands. Former students accuse elite academy of cover-ups. Police reviewing new Blake Donovan footage. Every screen Blake looked at showed another version of himself falling apart. For the first time in his life, nobody was protecting him fast enough. Blake sat alone in the back corner of history class, while students pretended not to stare. His split lip from the fight with Connor Hayes remained dark purple against his face, making him look less like Redwood's golden boy and more like somebody already halfway destroyed. The silence around him felt unnatural. Not respect, isolation. Even Coach Darnell refused to meet Blake's eyes during morning practice. The football field that once belonged to him now felt hostile, every whisper sounding like judgment behind his back. "He's done. My parents said colleges are already backing off. I heard police interviewed Connor." Blake clenched his fists so hard his knuckles hurt. Across campus, Nia Carter watched the collapse happen carefully from a distance. Students who ignored her weeks earlier now approached quietly between classes, offering sympathy or awkward apologies. Some admitted they always knew Blake was dangerous, but never thought anyone could challenge him publicly. That only made Nia angrier. Because Marcus Hill never got this support, nobody stood beside him when he disappeared. Now people acted brave because the internet made it safe. Still, Nia couldn't ignore the reality unfolding around her. Redwood Academy was unraveling by the hour. Protest signs lined the front gates. Parents screamed during emergency board meetings. Local news vans permanently parked outside campus like predators waiting for fresh blood. And in the center of it all stood Blake Donovan, slowly losing everything that once made him untouchable. By lunchtime, rumors spread that police investigators had formally requested security records from the school. Another former football player anonymously confirmed online that violent initiation rituals existed inside the locker rooms for years. The deeper investigators dug, the uglier the truth became. Then came the final blow. At exactly 1:13 p.m., every television screen across campus suddenly changed. Cafeteria monitors, hallway screens, library projectors, even the giant display above the football stadium. Static flickered briefly before a paused video appeared everywhere simultaneously. Students froze. Teachers looked up in confusion. And Blake Donovan stopped walking mid-hallway. Because he recognized the footage instantly. Locker room security video. Marcus Hill. A message appeared beneath the frozen screen. The truth Redwood buried. Whispers exploded instantly across campus. "Oh my God, is that Marcus who hacked the system?" Then the video began playing. Every hallway at Redwood Academy fell silent as students watched Blake and his teammates corner Marcus Hill against the lockers. The footage echoed through the school from dozens of mounted speakers, while horrified students stared openly. Marcus trying to defend himself. Blake shoving him backward. The punches. The violence. Coach Darnell standing nearby doing absolutely nothing. Gasps spread across the cafeteria. Several students covered their mouths. One girl near the front office started crying quietly. Because suddenly this wasn't rumors anymore. It wasn't online drama. It was real. And everyone was watching together. Blake stood frozen beneath one of the hallway screens, while the footage played directly above him like a public execution. Students slowly stepped backward away from him, instinctively, creating distance without even realizing it. Nobody defended him. Nobody spoke for him. Not one teammate moved. Blake looked around desperately as panic overtook his face completely. "You don't understand," he shouted suddenly. But nobody answered. The silence destroyed him more than insults ever could. He turned toward a group of football players standing nearby. "Say something," they looked away. "Onebiwan," abandoning him silently. Blake's breathing became uneven now. His eyes darted wildly around the hallway while the video replayed again overhead. Marcus collapsing violently against the lockers beneath Blake's fists. "You think she's innocent?" Blake yelled desperately, pointing somewhere toward the crowd where Nia stood watching. "You think any of this is fair?" Still nobody defended him. Not even Madison Pierce. She stood near the stairwell, staring at the floor, refusing to look at him. That was the moment Blake truly broke, because for the first time in his entire life, Blake Donovan stood completely alone. The pressure crushed him all at once. The internet, the police, the school, his mother losing power, Connor betraying him, everyone staring, everyone recording, everyone finally seeing him clearly. Blake staggered backward beneath the massive hallway screen while the footage continued playing above him. His breathing turned sharp and uneven. His hands shook visibly. Then suddenly his knees gave out. The entire hallway gasped. Blake Donovan collapsed hard onto the polished floor directly beneath the giant screen, showing his own violence over and over again. A broken sound escaped his throat before he covered his face with both hands. And then he started crying. Not quiet tears. Not controlled emotion. Full collapse. Sobbing violently in the middle of Redwood Academy while hundreds of students stared in stunned silence around him, the golden boy of Redwood. Face down. Destroyed publicly by the truth he spent years burying. Nobody moved to help him. Phones recorded from every angle. The sound of Blake crying echoed unnaturally through the hallway beneath Marcus Hill's frozen image overhead. Nia stood motionless near the back of the crowd, heart pounding hard inside her chest. Weeks ago, Blake humiliated her publicly in this same school while everyone watched silently. Now the roles had reversed completely. Students slowly turned toward Nia, waiting, watching, because everyone assumed the same thing: revenge. After everything Blake did to her, surely this was the moment she would finally destroy him completely. Blake looked up from the floor then, eyes red, face shattered, and for one brief second, the entire hallway held its breath. As Nia Carter slowly began walking toward him, the hallway remained completely silent as Nia Carter walked toward Blake Donovan. Hundreds of students stood frozen beneath the glowing screens, replaying the locker room footage over and over again. But nobody spoke anymore. The chaos from earlier had vanished, replaced by something heavier, something uncomfortable: reality. Blake remained collapsed on the polished floor beneath the giant monitor, shoulders trembling violently while fragments of Marcus Hill's assault flickered across the walls around him. His hands covered most of his face now, but not enough to hide the humiliation breaking through him piece by piece. Just weeks ago, Blake stood in these same hallways laughing while Nia was isolated, harassed, and publicly destroyed. Now the entire school watched him unravel instead, and everyone expected revenge. Nia could feel it in the crowd surrounding them. Students leaned forward slightly, phones raised carefully. Waiting for the moment, she finally said something cruel enough to finish him off completely. After everything Blake had done, the bullying, the threats, the lies, the violence, nobody would have blamed her. Even Blake seemed to expect it. Slowly, he looked up at her through tear-filled eyes. For the first time since Nia met him, there was no arrogance left inside his face. No control. No superiority. Only fear and shame sitting where power used to live. Nia stopped directly in front of him. The hallway held its breath. Blake tried speaking first, but his voice cracked apart immediately. Nothing came out. Because there was nothing left to defend. Nia looked down at him quietly, while Marcus Hill's frozen image reflected across the polished floor beside Blake's knees. She remembered the cafeteria laughter, the threats sent to her phone at night, the silence from teachers, the way people watched her suffer without intervening because Blake Donovan made cruelty feel socially acceptable. And suddenly, Nia realized something important. Blake already lost. Completely. Destroying him further wouldn't heal Marcus. It wouldn't erase what happened. It wouldn't make the silence disappear. So instead of anger, Nia spoke softly. Now you know how silence feels. The words landed harder than shouting ever could. Blake lowered his head instantly as another broken sob escaped his chest. Around them, students slowly lowered their phones one by one. Some looked uncomfortable now, others ashamed. Because Nia's sentence wasn't only about Blake, it was about everyone who watched, everyone who stayed quiet, everyone who allowed power to decide whose pain mattered. By sunset, Redwood Academy officially entered collapse. Emergency board meetings lasted for hours while protesters crowded outside the campus gates, holding signs demanding arrests, resignations, and criminal investigations. National media trucks lined the streets surrounding the school, while reporters shouted questions at anyone stepping outside the administration building. The story had become impossible to contain. At 7:42 p.m., Principal Reynolds released a public statement announcing his resignation effective immediately. The internet exploded again. Students reposted clips of him defending institutional stability beside headlines accusing Redwood administrators of suppressing racial violence for years. Former teachers anonymously leaked emails suggesting complaints against football players had been ignored repeatedly to protect the school's reputation and funding. Everything hidden inside Redwood Academy was finally surfacing all at once, and at the center of the media storm stood Victoria Donovan, outside the emergency board meeting that evening. Reporters surrounded her the second she exited the building. Camera flashes exploded violently across the dark parking lot, while microphones pushed toward her from every direction. "Mrs. Donovan, did you pressure the school board to remove Marcus Hill? Did your family influence disciplinary investigations? Do you deny covering up assaults involving your son?" Victoria tried forcing her way through the crowd with security guards surrounding her. But for the first time in years, control had abandoned her too. "No comment," one attorney shouted repeatedly, but nobody stopped asking questions. Because powerful people only looked untouchable until fear switched sides. Across social media, millions watched the downfall happen live. Some celebrated, others argued. But one truth remained undeniable now. Redwood Academy protected violence for years. And everybody finally knew it. Late that night, after reporters left and protest, crowds slowly disappeared into the cold darkness. Blake Donovan sat alone inside his bedroom with every light turned off except the faint glow of his laptop screen. The silence inside the room felt suffocating. His phone sat discarded across the bed, surrounded by hundreds of unread messages from reporters, lawyers, teammates, and strangers online calling him everything from a monster to a coward. College recruiters had already withdrawn interest. Sponsors disappeared. Friends stopped answering. Even Connor Hayes blocked his number. Blake stared blankly at the screen in front of him, while another video replayed quietly for the 100th time. Not the locker room footage. Not the fight. The first clip. The debate classroom. Nia Carter standing confidently in front of the class, challenging him publicly for the very first time. Then Blake's own voice echoed through the dark room. "Girls like you should learn when to stay quiet." Blake watched himself laugh afterward. Watched the classroom laugh with him. Watched the beginning of everything. And sitting alone in darkness while the empire built around his name collapsed outside those walls. Blake finally understood the truth. Nobody at Redwood Academy had ever taught him. Power only survives as long as people stay silent. The screen continued glowing softly across his face, while distant news helicopters circled somewhere above the city, and far away from Redwood Academy. Millions of strangers continued sharing the same story online, over and over again. The school protected power for years, until the wrong girl refused to stay quiet. And just like that, the school that spent years protecting power, money, and silence finally collapsed because one girl refused to bow her head and disappear. Blake Donovan thought humiliation was entertainment when he was the one holding power, until the entire world watched him become the face of everything he tried to hide. But here's the real question: do you think Blake truly deserved what happened to him in the end? Or did the school create the monster long before Nia exposed him? Write your opinion down in the comments because I genuinely want to know where you stand on this story. And if this video kept you hooked until the very last second, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more intense stories about power, betrayal, racism, and shocking public downfalls that Hollywood would never dare to make this brutally honest,